all the consumers of the data can use a single secure view for customer, for product, for sales. So now instead of having this report sprawl where organizations might feel tempted to create multiple copies of the data, maybe even send them out via email to the appropriate clients, guess what? Those manual processes eventually break.
Welcome to Powered by Snowflake, a series where I interview technology leaders building applications and businesses on Snowflake. I'm your host, Daniel Myers, and today I'm talking with Michael Magalsky, founder, CEO, and principal architect at infoSecur. infoSecur manages and enforces fine-grained access control at the cell level across your data cloud. Michael, how are you today?
We're busy. We've got a lot of work to do, and it's just exciting to be here and take a little pause and visit with you folks here at Snowflake. We're excited about this partnership.
Well, I'm excited to have you in the studio today. And really, to kick this off, tell me more about infoSecur and a little bit more about what exactly do you do?
I guess to do justice to that story, you've got to go back about 5 years ago, a little more than that. I was working at Micron Technology. One day the CISO walks in and says, shut down your data warehouse. We're being targeted by the Chinese. And they had actually come out in the news and said, if Micron doesn't sell us their technology, we will steal it from them. This is the Chinese government-sponsored entity that is going to compete with Micron. So we did. We shut down our data warehouse for about 10 days. We had to come up with a solution for how to secure our data at the cell level so that only people internally in our organization could see what they needed to, but not anything more. Well, fast forward a couple of years, and I had branched out of Micron at that point and had started InfoVia in 2018, early 2018. And we started as a service organization. We wanted to share our best practices and what we'd learned from the cloud, from data management best practices, using automation. Once we'd integrated companies' data, we needed a way to share it securely. And we thought back, hey, we've done this before. We did this to keep our IP out of the hands of governments. And at that point, we were working with healthcare, insurance agency, and also with some education clients. And it turned out that they all needed the same type of access control. And so we had implemented as a service this solution now in high tech and the healthcare industry, and then insurance and education. And we thought, I think we are onto something here. This could really take form. And so we launched about 3.5 years ago the concept of infoSecur as a product, who is bringing this partnership opportunity to Snowflake to share this best practice and access governance and access management and control with the world, our common customers.
So tell me more about, you mentioned, healthcare industry, you mentioned a few of the industries that you work in.
Right.
What are some of the solutions, that you build using infoSecur?
I think most people know about HIPAA. We've all been in a doctor's office and signed the HIPAA form, right? So most healthcare organizations, all of them in the US certainly are bound by HIPAA, and they're frozen almost, you might say, in fear of breaches. Breaches can cost hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars. And so the ability to share data in confidence, knowing that you still you and your organization control the access management policies for those within your organization, as well as those outside your organization that might have a valid need to know. We have solved that use case by giving control for the access policies to the business users. So no longer does it need to be IT managing access to the data. IT builds the foundation. That's what infoSecur does. It slides in at your database level, allows you at that layer to manage your policies, because that's the layer that everybody has in common. So as all of these different consumers of your data are coming to the database, to Snowflake, where you've got this incredible amount of integrated data with value through the roof, but also the responsibility to manage access to the data at that layer, we're able to put security policies in place there so that the business can manage those policies, but they're applied at the database level so that everything downstream, all of your reporting and analytics tools, your machine learning models, even your ad hoc SQL queries, all are playing by the same security policy, by the same rules.
So that sounds like an incredibly powerful platform and one that is pretty critical to any data-driven business.
It is. It's not only healthcare, although in high-tech manufacturing and in healthcare, it was extremely important, and billions of dollars were on the line. But student privacy is pretty important. So as we gain clients in the education space, both at the local level with school departments, as well as some of the largest colleges with hundreds of thousands of students at the higher ed level, we found that student privacy was as important as healthcare and IP within businesses. And what it turned out was that with a generic, organic approach at managing that access, we can solve all of those problems with one solution, a configurable solution that runs on the database platform.
That is pretty cool. So I want to see a demo of this platform running on Snowflake. Can we see that today?
Oh yeah, I'm always happy to show it off. It's simple, yet it does a job very well, especially on the Snowflake platform, which is essentially infinitely scalable. And so our engine actually runs on Snowflake. It works with the Snowflake optimizer so that the queries with security can run faster than they ran without security. Think about that for a moment. You add security to your platform and it improves your performance. We think that's a win-win situation.
I love the fact that you mentioned that you push these types of policies into Snowflake, right? And so you're leveraging Snowflake's compute, Snowflake's optimizer in order to improve your customer's experience.
That's right. Yeah, some people challenge us on that. Well, Snowflake has row-level security and some column masking capabilities. Why not just use those? And you can. If you're a pretty savvy data engineer or DBA type person, right? You have to have a high level of technical skill to implement that. And our business people don't. And that's really where the management of these rules belong, is on the business side. So we want to give an interface to the business where they can manage the policies that are implemented and enforced down in the database layer. It takes a load off of your IT team, because I know administrators who lay awake at night hoping that their data is not being nefariously used or inappropriately shared.
Right.
This is a way to give that access control to the people in the business who know best who should or should not be using their data, and take that load off the IT team.
That's great. That's great. Well, let's see it in action.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Before we drive right into the demo, let's talk a little bit about how this works architecturally. I'm still a data guy. We're running a security company here, but we still want to get down in the weeds. I'm always taken there, but I know some of our viewers today are technical in nature as well. So they want to see the how behind the what.
Absolutely.
So let's dive in here. So let's say that this is your modern data landscape, and this is pretty typical. You've got a bunch of sources out here to the left. You've got your ETL, or maybe more modern, your ELT, that's running to pull that data into your Snowflake data cloud. You might have some data lake and blob store data out there as well that you're integrating with that. What we do is we set up a set here of logical data marts, or we call them secure views. Okay, they're just views. They're Snowflake secure views, like we all know and love, but we generate them based on metadata that's managed by a collaboration of IT and the business. That metadata allows the users to select their data out of these data stores on the cloud, and our infoSecur metadata right here is what manages the policies. So this maps what users play which roles, and which of those roles can see specific data assets. So we say data assets, everybody thinks tables and views and schemas, right? Well, we go to the lower, finer grain than that. We take this all the way down to the cell level. So you can create a policy so that a given user can only see one cell in your database. Probably not that usable, but it's capable of that type of policy. Mainly what we see is managing access at the row level and the column level, and overlapping those with each other so that any given user only sees that filtered set of data that they should see, that they're allowed to. So we start with default deny. So a new user sees nothing. They can run select star from your Snowflake secure view right here, but they see nothing, and we'll show that in the demo. However, a user that has policies set up that allow them to see rows and columns runs the same select star statement, either through a BI tool or even a direct access query. And what they see is a subset of that data filtered such that all the data downstream, all the consumers of the data, can use a single secure view for customer, for product, for sales. So now instead of having this report sprawl where organizations might feel tempted to create multiple copies of the data, maybe even send them out via email to the appropriate clients, guess what? Those manual processes eventually break and somebody sees data they shouldn't. This allows people to pull data that's fresh and new at the time they need it and still only see that subset of data that is appropriate for them, filtered at the row and masked at the column level. So these logical data marts are very key. We call them polymorphic, to play on the software development term for the same thing that has multiple forms. So based on the context of who the user is that's selecting data out, that's how we manage which rows and columns that particular user can see. So now you have one customer report, and everybody can see that customer report. And if I'm the customer myself, I'm logging in as the customer, how many rows should I see in the customer report? Just mine. But if I'm the global sales manager, I should probably see all customers or any grain in between there.
That's pretty critical to really scaling an organization to, just like you said, being able to have that single view, but multiple people leveraging it, right? I love the term, polymorphic, it plays on it, like you said. And, I can definitely see why a solution like this, it can be adopted so well in a wide variety of use cases.
Well, it allows people, not only that, but it allows for users to have a one-stop shop. Everybody coming to Snowflake for their data because that's where the single point of truth or information resides. And it allows IT managers and data directors or chief data officers to manage that report sprawl and the number of copies of their data that are out there. Because the simpler you make your access, the easier it is to manage it. So these polymorphic views, and I appreciate that you appreciate that term because I grew up as a software engineer and we used object-oriented programming. We did all that. And I think those same concepts do apply in the data world. And I think they can make it easier to manage that data access and the number of data objects that you have to build and support for your users to consume.
Totally agree.
Ultimately reducing them to one per data object, one customer, one product, and so on. Enough about the high level. Let's dive in and actually show this in action. I'll start with our user interface. This runs on the web. It's a browser-based tool. I'm going to log in as myself here. And this is running against that metadata. These are the policies that we're building that reside. Really, it could be on any data platform, but specifically here, we're managing these policies on the Snowflake cloud. All right. Now, the categories are the types of secure elements that might cause my data to become sensitive. So you see here, we have PII names and maybe the state that data resides in. So if somebody had a region or a territory, maybe there's only a subset of states, all right? So we're going to show today how we can mask columns with PII, or personally identifiable information, and filter rows at the state level and do both simultaneously. So we've created a category for each. If you look, we have, I think, 3 states here defined. Then we're going to group those categories and their values into what we call a class. And a class is a rule. It's a rule that helps us reuse the association of tags and column values with data assets. So we're going to take those data assets and map them to the users by these rules. We don't use the term rule because it's too much like role. Okay. So we're going to use the term class. All right. A class is just a set of values. So right here, we've grouped the Western states together. And we've said that anybody with this class assigned to their user or role can see the states of Texas and Colorado. Whereas someone with the access for the Midwest states can only see in our set, I think we have one Midwest state, Nebraska. Okay. Now we take the users that are in our database and we map them to those classes. And you can do this one of 2 ways. You can either do it directly. We're going to talk about Marcus the manager and Herb the handler. We're going to map these 2 users to those classes or those rules that they can use, okay? Now, let's think of this database. This is a superhero database, all right? But it's It's actually a set of sales transactions for products and customers where some of those products are superpowers and some of the customers are superheroes, but not all of them. So we have rules behind the scenes, kind of behind that curtain, that a person with the right access, like Herb the handler, right? He's a handler for Superman. He can see Superman's data. Whereas Marcus, the store manager, all he knows is he was selling bicycle parts to a bicycle enthusiast, right? Where he was really selling kryptonite to Superman, or I don't know why Superman would want to buy kryptonite, but you got the idea. Let's talk about how Marcus, the manager, who is someone who should maybe only see the store, he's a store manager, so he should only see data for the bicycle shop, not the superhero shop, all right? So Marcus, the manager, has a policy. He has the role of store manager, and he has specific class assigned to him that gives him access to only masked PII data, as opposed to clear or the super secret PII data. And he can only see the Midwest states, all right? Let's contrast him, Marcus, the manager, the store manager, with Herb, the handler. He's the handler for these superheroes, so he can see much more data. So he has the role of superhero handler, and he has the class assigned to him of not just the Western states, but also the Midwest states. So he can see more states than the store manager can. Let's look for a second at this role superhero handler. What is that? What's behind that? Well, the superhero handler role has PII secret capability assigned to him. So we can use roles to assign these classes to a user.
Okay.
You can reuse these roles, so role-based security, or we can use the user's individual policies, like these classes that we assign directly to Herb. So you kind of have your cake and eat it too. You can either use role-based security, or you can use user-based explicit security, or you can use them in coordination with each other or in combination.
Pretty flexible then.
Yeah. It is flexible. It's meant to be that. Okay, so we're going to impersonate Herb the handler first. And Herb can see all data. And so let's run the query as if we're Herb. We're going to impersonate Herb here. All right. And by impersonate, this is essentially the same capability as Herb logged on as himself. All right. I'm logged on as infoSecur, but right here I'm telling it from today until 2029, let infoSecur impersonate Herb, all right? So now that we're set up as Herb, we can actually look at what policies are in effect for Herb. We can run these current user policies, and you can see, just as we saw in the user interface, this is on the database side, you can see that Herb can see Nebraska and Colorado and Texas, plus he has this special secret clearance, all right? So what does that mean? Well, it means that when we run the secure view, VS customer, this is where the rubber meets the road, right? This is where the user runs this polymorphic view, this VS secure view for customer, such that any given user can use this view and only see what they're supposed to see. Notice that Herb can see that this is actually the Invisible Woman and Captain America masquerading as Mrs. Wilson and Dr. Payton, okay? But there are other users in this database who don't have superpowers or aren't superheroes. He can see them as well, all right? Because he's a handler, he gets to see anyone. Let's look at what the same query does when we masquerade as, instead of Herb the handler, Marcus the manager. Remember, Marcus can only see the Midwest states, and he can only see the names, the masked names, not the superhero's identity themselves. So let's go down here to the same view, that same VS customer view. If you can imagine, he's running the same report that the handler runs. So the CIO runs the same report as the, janitor or individual contributor or middle-level manager. And here you're managing, notice he only sees one row because there's only one customer in the Nebraska region. And this name is masked, so he doesn't see whether or not there's a superhero associated with this person. So you can see here that we've controlled access at the cell level by managing row level access and column level access simultaneously. But what we haven't shown you yet is what happens if someone isn't known in the system. So let's scroll up here and let's impersonate for a second somebody named Barney. All right. Barney is actually known in the system because he's got to have a logon to even get onto Snowflake, right? But let's look at what policies Barney has here. So the user Barney, don't ask me how I chose the name Barney. I don't know if it's a dinosaur or a sheriff. But notice he has no classes assigned to him and no roles. We can show that in the database now by running his policies. I could have cut to the chase, just gone right to that secure view. But let's look at the policies and make sure that they agree with what we saw in the user interface. They do here. Notice that it produced no results, so he has no policies. So what happens if the user Barney gets access to this secret customer report? Well, he sees no data. So theoretically, you could give access to all your users internally and even externally. You could give them all a Snowflake login if you wanted. But if they run data and they're not explicitly granted rights to see rows and columns, they see no rows. They see nothing coming back. And what's the harm in that? They accumulate a little bit of Snowflake spend, right? But at the end of the day, you're implementing your security in layers such that the database enforces that whoever is asking can only see what's necessary for them. So that really concludes the demo from a what it does perspective. But let's just say for a second, right before we leave, that Barney is a valid user and we want to give him access. We can do that in one of two ways. We can give him a role, like we could make him a handler if we wanted. Okay, so a role, we could make him a handler or a store manager. Let's go ahead and give him the handler access. Notice that we've given him, that's essentially column level access because he can see that special column. But just to prove that that's not sufficient, let's go ahead and run this customer query here. Barney hasn't been granted access to any specific states data. So he still sees no rows, even though he's been granted column level access. Let me go back to the UI and let me give Barney the class for maybe the Western states. All right, we'll just start with them. So he can only see the Western states and he can see that super secret data because he's a handler. So now, if we run that same query again, same query, all we changed was the policies, right? Through the slick little user interface. Now Barney, who couldn't see any data before, when the query returns, he sees all the customers from the Western states, and he sees, for those who have a secret name, he sees that secret name.
A platform like this and kind of the framework that you've set up is pretty powerful for implementing all sorts of different complex uses like this. This is pretty exciting to see. What was it about Snowflake that made you choose to build this platform on Snowflake?
Well, everybody's coming this direction. So we don't have a client yet who's moved to Snowflake and not liked it. So they're all coming that direction. So we know aligning with Snowflake from a strategic perspective is a good move, right? But also from a technology perspective, it's proven that it can scale to the level that our clients demand. We've actually had clients with 10 trillion records in a data set. And when we overlaid security over that, it performed better than it did without security. That's pretty hard to imagine when you think about it. But if you consider that our policies are being exposed to the database optimizer. So the optimizer is now policy aware, and it can execute these queries, especially in highly selective policies, much faster than they could have been executed with other platforms or other solutions in this space. Obviously, if you're intercepting a query, if you're a type of solution that sits on top of the database and has to process millions or billions or potentially trillions of records and then filter those post-database, that's going to perform dismally.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can feed that data into the optimizer, and we work with the optimizer, our engine works with the database optimizer to do what databases do really well, which is merge data sets together. Well, we merge our policies with your data to produce filtered results.
Nice. So for your customers, right, 6 months, 1 year down the road, a product like this, what is on the roadmap that your customers should get excited about?
Right. Well, we know that while, especially our common customers, but potentially the world, it can benefit from a Snowflake partnership and from bringing their data into the cloud. But we know that that's not going to happen overnight. So we know that there's still going to be legacy data warehouses that people are in the organization are still querying, right? Likewise, there's still going to be source systems that people, where the data is entered ultimately. And if you lock the front door to your data, but leave the back door wide open, what have you accomplished? Do you have data security? Not really. So what we've done is we've made our engine platform agnostic. So we can deploy these policies not only in Snowflake for the modern data warehouse, but also in the legacy warehouse and in the source platforms, so that the same policies can be enforced in multiple areas. And we feel that that's very strategic, because organizations need to secure those legacy and OLTP databases as well as their modern data stack.
And so really from here, right, for our viewers today, if they want to learn more about you, about infoSecur, and the model that you've built here, where should they go?
We have a website, so info-secure.com. And also we're on the Snowflake Marketplace. So with the new native apps that have come, were released just at Summit just a couple months ago. And we were one of the first technology partners on native apps. So we're really excited about that. We're working with the great Snowflake team, really at the bleeding edge of making that platform work. And so it's a one-click install on the Snowflake native apps platform.
So Michael, I want to say thank you for coming in today, joining me here in the studio. It's been great having you.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor, and we're so excited about this partnership with Snowflake. And really, it's about our common customers. It's about those organizations and companies out there that are finally able to put their data all in one place, but then share it with the confidence, knowing that their users only see what's appropriate for them, and it scales infinitely.
Could not agree more. So for everybody watching here today, my name is Daniel, and this has been another episode of Powered by Snowflake.